Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren. This month we read The Diviners by Libba Bray. This book was recommended to us by a user on Instagram.
All right, so let's talk about the author a little bit first. Libba Bray is a New York Times bestselling author of the Jimmy Doyle trilogy, which encompasses A Great and Terrible Beauty, Rebel Angels, and The Sweet Far Thing. The Michael L. Prince Award-winning Going Bovine, Beauty Queens, an LA Times Book Prize finalist, and the Diviners series, which we read the first one of for this podcast. She's originally from Texas, but makes her home in Brooklyn, New York, with her husband, son, and 2 sociopathic cats. Those are her words, not mine, about the cats. Barbara, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so it was originally published on September 18th of 2012. The genre is YA fantasy, paranormal, mystery, and horror. And depending on the copy, it is 578 pages. So it currently has a 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads, 4.4 out of 5 on Barnes & Nobles, 4.4 out of 5 on Amazon, and a 4.4 out of 5 on Audible. And it has been nominated for the Bram Stoker Award for Best Young Adult Novel back in 2012, the Locus Award for Best Young Adult Book in 2013, the Inky Awards for Silver Inky, fun, in 2013, the Andre Norton Award in 2012, the Goodreads Choice Award for Young Adult Fantasy and Science Fiction in 2012, the Inky Award shortlist for Silver Inky in 2013, but it has not won any awards. And we do think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, there are main POC characters, but no main LGBTQ plus characters in this book, but in the following books there are. And no characters with disabilities, once again, in this book, but in the following books there is as well.
All right, thank you. And Lauren, do you want to give us a little summary?
Sure. So this book was centered around a girl named Evie who basically gets exiled from her hometown and shipped off to New York because of her abilities that she may or may not have. So it's 1926. New York is filled with speakeasies, Ziegfeld girls, and rakish pickpockets. The only catch is that she has to live with her Uncle Will and his unhealthy obsession with the occult. And Unc is a little interesting. Evie worries her uncle will discover her darkest secret, a supernatural power that has only brought her trouble so far. But when the police find a murdered girl branded with a cryptic symbol and Will is called to the scene, Evie realizes her gift could help catch a serial killer. As Evie jumps headlong into a dance with a murderer, other stories unfold in the city that never sleeps. A young man named Memphis is caught between 2 worlds. A chorus girl named Theta is running from her past. A student named Jericho is hiding a shocking secret. And unknown to all, something dark and evil has awakened. Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum, bum. All right, so what did you think about The Diviners? And remember, no spoilers.
So obviously, I really like this book in the series as a whole. I will say, though, that the books do get better as the series go along, and I think this one's good, but I really enjoyed the other ones in the series, and I think they're better personally, but that's my 2 cents.
So I really liked the book too. This is one that it's the first book I read on my very first Kindle. Barbara recommended it to me back in the day. I really enjoyed the story. I think the characters are really interesting and have not only like interesting arcs, but all the different cool things that's going on with like the paranormal aspect of the book. I really enjoyed. I love paranormal. I love horror. This incorporated those in an urban setting, which I like urban fantasy. I think this kind of could fall under that category too. I really enjoyed the book, and I have not read the second and third books yet, but I would really like to.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed this one. Oh, apparently there's 4 books, Michael.
Yeah, how embarrassing.
Whoopsie daisy.
I enjoyed the book too. I liked the characters. I liked the writing style. I think that the plot was good. It was well paced overall. I really liked her ability to write characters, including villain characters, which we'll get to later.
So obviously at this point, we're not going to go into our individual ratings. You got to wait for that till the end. But our group score for this book was an 8 out of 10. So would you recommend this book? For me, yeah, absolutely. I think that, unless you're a reader who refuses to read anything that could be remotely scary, which I'm sure there are people like that out there, then they wouldn't enjoy this book. But for anybody else, I think this book could have a pretty wide audience. It touches on a lot of things, a lot of different genres. So yes, in 9 out of 10 cases, I would recommend this book.
I would recommend it. I think that it, like Michael said, like it has enough of the scary element to where if you are into that sort of genre, you would like it. It also has the fantasy element, which is attractive to all of the fantasy people. But I'm not like a huge fantasy buff, and I actually enjoyed the amount of fantasy that this one kind of had. Like, it wasn't over the top. You didn't have to keep track of a whole nother world.
Once again, obviously, I would recommend it. If you listen to our podcast at all, you know that I'm always recommending it. So that's a given for me. And like Michael said, I think it appeals to a wide audience because there's a lot of different genres and blending in this book. Although, like Michael also mentioned, if you're not a huge horror fan, I do find like this dips in that quite a bit, and it is kind of creepy in that sense, and I think she does a really, really good job of that, even if it is a YA. Like, it's a high YA, so if you're not a huge horror fan, you might have nightmares with this.
I mean, I thought I was gonna have nightmares, you guys. Didn't, but I thought I might.
Yeah,
it for sure. I mean, it doesn't just dip its toe into the horror; it dives all the way in.
Well, sure, but I meant just like for, when most people think YA, it's not like, oh, okay, so YA is not going to be like real, real creepy. No, she gets real creepy in this, and I think she does a really good job of it. But if that kind of stuff, you're kind of squeamish, then that's maybe not for you, because honestly, it only gets worse. So in the later books, so
I think on that point, when I read this, I remember thinking, because at the time that I read this, I had not read a lot of YA books. Barbara obviously reads a lot of YA books, and I was always hesitant to read them.
Why
at
is
that point
obviously?
because you talk about them all the time. I was hesitant because I thought it was going to be not like a children's book, but not didn't have the same like depth of maturity as an adult book. And to be honest, I don't think this one read like a stereotypical YA book. I think it felt more like adult fiction to me.
The only thing that screamed YA to me was like all of the skis she added to the words. Like, I was like, oh geez.
That was a 20s thing though, but
yeah, like that's the bee's knees and that kind of crap. But that's what they said.
No, like the something with a ski on the end. Like,
what do you mean a ski? I guess I don't understand that.
Like, I'm trying to think, like joke ski, or like she just like kept using things with the.
But that was 20s slang though. That was how they talked.
Okay, well, I didn't realize that because I feel like when I was working in the schools, that was how a lot of my young people would talk. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe that's kind of trying to connect with the youth.
The younger. So that would be like nowadays if people wrote YA and they say like, oh, that's totally a vibe and that kind of stuff.
It's a whole vibe.
It's a whole vibe.
I mean, I can't even.
Anyway, for those of you who are leaving us at this point, don't forget to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts if you like us, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'd love to hear from you, and if you've got a book you want us to read and talk about on this show, let us know. Leave a comment. Send us a DM. Now, before we move on, Lauren is going to give us a short preview of what we've got coming up next.
So next month, we are reading The Life We Bury by Alan Eskins, which was recommended to us by Rebecca on Facebook. Thanks, Rebecca. Here's the preview. College student Joe Talbert has the modest goal of completing a writing assignment for an English class. His task is to interview a stranger and write a brief biography of the person. With deadlines looming, Joe heads to a nearby nursing home to find a willing subject. There he meets Carl Iverson, and soon nothing in Joe's life is ever the same. Carl is a dying Vietnam vet and a convicted murderer. With only a few months to live, he has been medically paroled to a nursing home after spending 30 years in prison for the crimes of rape and murder. As Joe writes about Carl's life, especially Carl's valor in Vietnam, he cannot reconcile the heroism of the soldier with the despicable acts of the convict. Joe, along with his skeptical female neighbor, throws himself into uncovering the truth, but he is hamstrung in His efforts by having to deal with his dangerously dysfunctional mother, the guilt of leaving his autistic brother vulnerable, and a haunting childhood memory. Thread by thread, Joe unravels the tapestry of Carl's conviction, but as he and Lila dig deeper into the circumstances of the crime, the stakes grow higher. Will Joe discover the truth before it's too late to escape the fallout? Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's interesting because I definitely didn't realize that they would let someone go to a nursing home. Like, I've never heard of that, so I wonder if
I
that's a
haven't either. I was just thinking that it's like, I don't remember that being a thing working in the medical profession. Like, oh, okay, you're on, death row, but if you're on death's bed, then we're just going to put you in here comfy. Like, I didn't think that's how that happened.
I've never heard of it, but, I'm not super privy to that, so that'll be interesting.
It could also be like a government-run facility, not like a traditional nursing home. Like, it could be a secure facility is what I meant. Like, nursing homes traditionally, like, you can't just walk in and out of them. Like, they're pretty locked down.
No, you can't. But, like, I personally, if I was an older person and there was some person here that was charged for rape and murder, I would not want to be living anywhere near them.
Old people be
can
like
still do that. Old people still be doing that shiz. Like, we have some, they be frisky. Let me tell you, when I worked in old folks' home.
So I'm guessing he probably has a pretty serious medical condition to be paroled out of prison and sent to a nursing home, though, where he needs constant medical care. So
yeah, but if he's dying and he's in there for life, just let him die. Anyways, I think we're talking about this. There's no reason for this.
Anyway, that's what's coming up next month. If you think that sounds good, join us next month to hear about that book.
We'll try and have an answer for you by then.
We will. Remember, the second part of this episode is an in-depth look at this book, The Diviners. So if you do want to read that, stop listening right now, pause it, and come back when you're done reading.
These days, more authors are including mental health content in their books. But do you ever wonder how accurate some of this stuff is?
Or do you ever read something where you know the author just gets it?
I'm Elise.
And I'm Priscilla.
And we are Novel Feelings, a podcast where we discuss mental health issues in fiction novels.
We are psychologists and book lovers, and we have a lot of opinions.
So look for Novel Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, back to your show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. So we're going to start out like we always start out. Who does the Badass Character Award go to?
So my pick is Evie, and as annoying as I found her at times, which I do find her a bit annoying, I think she gets this just because, she essentially, out of the characters that you follow, I think she's the main one in this particular book, and she's also the one who saved the day and defeated good old creepy naughty John. So I think it has to go out to her for putting herself in danger for that sole purpose.
So I would also pick Evie for this one. I think that there were definitely times where, like you mentioned, Barbara, that you'd be like, maybe not. And I also think there are other characters in this book that could easily be nominated, but because Evie is the one that beats the big bad at the end of this one, I think that she gets the award.
And a third nomination for Evie. I think that it's just kind of the natural choice, since she is the main character and she's the one that saves the day, and she's the one that, the story is really most focused around. But she also did a lot of badass stuff. And like Michael said, there's other characters that arguably also did badass stuff, but I feel like ultimately she was the one that throughout the whole story maintained her badassery, even though, like Barbara, you said, I did find her annoying at times. But
I think one aspect, though, of her badassery, too, is that you think, like, the way that she behaved and the way that she held herself as a woman in the 20s, like, that wasn't normal at that point.
That's true.
And so that was pretty badass as well for her to be effectively a feminist kind of a person in the 20s.
The women characters in this book are kind of like that person.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so after those three nominations, the award goes to Blind Bill. Congratulations. No, I'm just kidding. The award goes to Evie. Evie is clearly the badass character in this book. Okay, so moving on from there, we're going to go into a little character discussion where we talk about each of the main characters a little bit and, what we liked, disliked about them, that kind of stuff. The first character, it's Evie, the one who just got the Badass Character Award. So Evie is a girl from Ohio who ends up getting sent to live in New York City with her uncle because her parents, she has an incident that happens with her power. And so she gets sent off to New York City to live with her mysterious, paranormal, loving uncle. That power, I should say, is that she can read the past from objects. So you can see how that would be pretty handy in like a murder investigation or something like that, where you could, touch the deceased object and all of a sudden maybe see what happened to them, which Evie may or may not do at points. I'm just kidding. It's the spoiler section. She definitely does that throughout the book. She helps out with quite a few little investigations as they're trying to figure out who's killing these people. But that's a little description on Evie. Did you guys have anything you wanted to talk about specifically with her before we go on to my next character?
So we do get different perspectives, but I do feel like in this particular book, she's the one who kind of drives the story further along. She is the main, out of the main characters. I think she's the number one main character for sure on in this one.
I'd agree. I think she definitely is the main, and you, like you said, we do get other perspectives, but hers is. What would you say, like 80% of the book is probably from Evie's perspective?
I don't know if it's 80.
What would you say, Lauren?
I mean, it's pretty high because even, I don't know, and maybe it's because I feel like the first section is so heavy on Evie. Like it just kind of centers, it seems like it always circles back to her. And like the other perspectives are there, but it kind of still circles back to her. The next character is James. And James is Evie's dead brother that she sees in her dreams. She has dreams about him, or I guess nightmares about him, and his death, I believe, in the army. Yeah, then he makes kind of a reappearance at the end.
So yeah, I mean, I thought James's character was really interesting. It's one of those weird things where, and Barbara and I were just talking about this when we were looking at this list. Like he's not a main character, right? Like he's not like he's like a perspective character or even close. But for somebody who, never really has any dialogue until the very end, and isn't in a lot of scenes, like you learn a lot about this character through the dreams that Evie has where he's in it, and just when she talks about him or has like her inner monologue talking about him. And I think Lauren mentioned that it's her dead brother. I think we could maybe put a question mark next to dead, because there's definitely some like inklings in the book later on that he is either maybe not dead or he has died here but still exists on some other plane of existence somehow. Which I don't know if that's going to be true or not. Barbara's probably not going to chime in on any of these kind of theories since she's read the whole series.
Nope,
but,
sure, I'm not.
That was one of my pressing questions and later in the episode that I ask about, like, is he dead? Is he not dead? Is he just a spirit now? We will find out.
Yep.
I will say I think he's the driving force for why Evie starts doing the things that she does, is just because she wants to learn more about like what happened to him, and he ties into that so each book is a self-contained story, but just like most books in a series, like you can read this one and it resolves the issues in this book, but there's aspects in each book that build upon for the greater ending of the book, which case obviously her brother is one of those, and that's why I've said like he's a leading force for her, why she gets involved in all this other stuff to begin with, I believe. So next up would be her uncle Will, that she goes to live with in New York City. So he's the owner of the Museum of Creepy Crawlies, which isn't technically the name, but that's what Evie calls the museum. And he gets not summoned. What is it? He gets like asked by the police to help in this kind of stuff. And that's kind of where she gets involved, and the other characters get involved as well. Because I feel like this is their little hubbub of where they meet, is the museum. And he's an interesting character. I don't want to say too much because, So if you guys have anything else to say.
I really liked Will's character. I thought he was very interesting. I think that it was kind of, I mean, obviously there's lots of, this isn't the first time there's been a situation where like the police call upon some sort of like a paranormal expert, like we've seen other shows and things where, police have like a psychic medium come, and it's at that point they're kind of grasping at straws, which they definitely were with some of these investigations.
Well, I think it's not more of like the paranormal aspects, it's the sense that he knows the occult, and that's what they're looking into. Not
That's
like
fair.
they obviously cops are never going to believe that ghosts are involved, even though in this
they
case
were.
it is. But like like if this is the real world, then like cops are going to come to do like, so we think it's a ghost that's murdering people. Like they're saying like, hey, there's these occult symbols and things. Do you know what they mean? And that's why he's involved. I should have said that, not they believe creepy crawlies are involved.
So I liked Will's character. I liked him a lot because I also really like the paranormal and the occult, not to the level that I should say, we probably like them the same. He knows a lot more about them seemingly in the book than I've done any research on, but I would definitely visit his museum. I thought that sounded so cool whenever they described things in there. So I would have for sure gone to that. But Lauren, did you have anything to say about Uncle Will?
Just that he's kind of a weirdo, but he's definitely a fascinating weirdo. And then, I mean, he's an interesting guy when on her way there to stay with him, like 6 different people are like, oh, that's your uncle? Oh, okay.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I liked his character. He was well written.
So moving on from Will, the next character is Mabel. Mabel is Evie's best friend that she makes in New York City once she gets there, who lives in her building. What did you guys think of Mabel?
It's very, very short and sweet to the point there, Michael. So Mabel is normal in the sense that she doesn't have any powers to speak of. She also has a crush on Jericho, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And she describes herself as like plain Jane. Like she's just like Evie is very, what is the word? And not introvert. What's the other word?
Outrovert or eccentric?
No, the other word. There's introvert.
Extrovert.
Okay. The extrovert, like she's very much an extrovert person. Like she likes being the life of the party. She loves the attention, whereas Mabel's like the opposite. Like she wants that, but she just doesn't see herself as that. She sees herself as more of like plain Jane. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, their friendship, I always thought. And maybe I shouldn't say too much, but anyways, yes, that's Mabel.
Yes. So I don't have a whole lot to add for Mabel. I liked her character. I think that she continues to kind of keep Evie attached to what, like, the not normal world, but normalcy, I guess. And then their, friendship up and downs were interesting to read. And I would be curious what kind of role she plays in future books. Memphis is next, and Memphis lives in Harlem and once had the ability to heal, but it was stolen from him. And he is, I don't know really how to describe Memphis other than the whole healing thing. And then
he's a poet. He wants to be a poet.
He wants to be a poet.
Like a sensitive kid who's a runner for it's called a runner, right? Like he's a runner.
He's a runner for the kingpin in their neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a runner, but like he's very sensitive. He doesn't want to be a runner, but he does it because kind of, the had to back then type thing. But like he's this little sensitive poet, and I heart Memphis so much. I
also really like Memphis. He was probably my favorite character actually in the book. I was pretty excited to find out that he has according to Barbara, has a larger role in future books. But
yes, he does.
I think, I really enjoyed
I also liked his relationship with his little brother, because like how much he loves his little brother, is like how very fiercely protective he is of his little brother.
Mm-hmm.
I figured he would have a role in future books when they gave him back his powers.
Spoilers!
We're in the spoiler section.
Okay, so Isaiah would be Memphis's little brother, and in this book, like there's a person that's testing him to see, and it's like you wrote down like he reads cards, like I think of it as more of 11 in Stranger Things, if anyone's seen that. Like he can predict things essentially, and that is Isaiah. So, but yes, you get hints of what he maybe has potentials of there. He obviously, the little brother, he loves Memphis like fiercely, and I just love really their dynamic and their relationship. And that's
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Not a lot to say about Isaiah. I also really liked his relationship with his brother. I thought that was cool. There were definitely some, I guess, a little bit more intense scenes, like with him and Blind Bill, as far as the Blind Bill trying to steal Isaiah's power and some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I definitely I like the relationship. Isaiah wasn't a huge character in this book, but they definitely set him up to be a bigger character in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, the comparison to Stranger Things makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like he could predict the future and kind of like tell what was coming up. But yeah, he didn't have a huge role.
Right, like he obviously has powers. We just get a little glimpse of what they have the potential of being here in this particular book. But
so next up we have Naughty John, or John Hobbs, the big bad in this book. So Naughty John is a notorious murderer / serial killer that is in the process during this book of trying to bring himself back from the dead through a series of ritual sacrifices that he's doing that are the murders that they're trying to solve are actually Naughty John's ritualistic sacrifices that he's doing to try to come back from the dead.
He is a ghost, so he's already dead, murdering people.
Very, very creepy character.
He is, and I love like the small little chapters that we get of his point of view, because it's so freaking creepy, man. Like it's so well written. He's such a creepy villain, and this is so I was like, anytime like a dude whistles, it like gives me PTSD from this book because of this book. So like when dudes whistle, I just automatically think he's a murderer. So like anytime Michael's like whistle, like, do not whistle, please.
So that's where this literally happens in our house on a regular basis. I'll be like whistling a tune and she's like, stop it, that's so creepy. It's like, what?
It's because of him. Like that initial like chapter of his perspective with him just like whistling away and pretending he's all kinds of nice, and then he just goes and murders that one chick. Like that stayed with me to the point where I do not like when men whistle, because I get that scene in my head back and I'm just like, oh gosh.
I can attest to that. She definitely doesn't like it.
And the little rhyme that he has, like John Naughty John's, I can't remember the whole thing, but super creepy.
Yeah, like he's just I really enjoy him as a villain because she did such a good job in writing him. Like the little that we get to see in his perspective versus like like we learn after the fact of what happened to the people that he's murdered. Like just top notch writing there, I think, for him.
I'm sure in future books he will return to my nightmares. The next one is Jericho, who is Will's assistant and a love interest of Mabel. And I think, was it you, Barbara, that said you're going to talk about Mabel's crush on Jericho later?
I mean, I just said, like, I mentioned him, like, she has a crush on him. It's just that whole, like, Mabel has a crush on Jericho. Jericho has a crush on Evie. Evie doesn't have a crush on Jericho until he starts liking her, and she also gets a crush on. So that's the YA aspect, I think, of this book, is this whole scenario. Because I mean, let's be honest, that actually does happen in like high school and stuff, like when you're young. But like in adult, well, I don't know, maybe it does happen to most people. I don't know. I don't think that's much of an adult scenario, but I think that's where that comes in. But yeah, that's all I was gonna mention about him as far as the crush and stuff. But obviously he has a much larger role, and you learn about his quote unquote deep dark secret.
So before I talk about Jericho, I looked up Naughty John's rhyme because we talked about that, and I wanted to read that. So the rhyme that Lauren was referring to that's super creepy is, Naughty John, does his work with his apron on, cuts your throat and takes your bones and sells them off for a couple of stones.
Oh, so dark. I was listening to this. Most of the podcast books I end up listening to in the car or randomly when I have time with my toddler. And I heard this and I was like, is she going to have nightmares? Like, she's not like paying attention.
Nightmare.
She'll be like 2 in a couple weeks. And like, she doesn't really pay attention to what I listen to, like, as far as that goes. But I'm like, man, I feel like I should turn this off. Like, it's super creepy.
I just pictured her like saying this back to you and you're like, what?
I would never sleep again.
She wakes up, Naughty John.
I would simply die.
You woke up to her like singing the little tune.
I would simply be deceased.
I would. I honestly don't know. I mean, do you throw the whole kid out at that point?
Yes, can I have a refund? She's
like the,
quoting Naughty John.
Like the Kevin Hart joke where he talks about how he's not above like punt kicking his kid when they scare him.
I don't know what I'd do in that situation, but it'd probably be similar. But yeah, that's a super creepy rhyme.
Anyway, so back to Jericho. I really enjoyed Jericho's character. He's not a super main character in this book. I think, again, it sets up to be more, I think that, and I might be wrong on this, but I'm just making a prediction, but I think Evie is the main character of this book, like, period. But it sets up for the future books, it seems to be less main character and more ensemble.
Yes, for sure. I will say that much is very much true. I think this one, she is the main character, but in the rest of the books, like a lot of the other characters and a few new characters are more of the like I feel like they switch out who's gonna the focus on the books.
Okay.
And I think she does a good job on that. Well, but as far as Jericho, like he's this very imposing, massive kind of figure. Like
he's a big boy.
He's a big boy, and you learn like that he was sick. Like he was sick as a kid, and then he took the experimental.
Yeah, because there's that scene in this book where he gets hurt and Evie sees like what looks like mechanical like machinations inside his body.
Right. That's how you say machination. So
they inject him with some mystery stuff.
Yes, it's the little serum. That's
that's all we got in this book. He
used to be a sickly kid, and then that's why now he's like beefcake. Is what I picture him like. So that would be Jericho, and Jericho also helps Evie in the end of the book to dispose of Naughty John. It's him and Evie down in that creepy horror house. But of course he gets, finally, for once, it's the girl that saves the day. But
there you go.
That would be good old Jericho. Anyway, so Sam, he is the pickpocket that Evie meets right after she gets off the train. And his powers, it's like he says like don't see me, which actually works with the pickpocket, and he essentially turns invisible, like you can't see him. So that's his powers. And he is also another hints love interest for Evie, I believe. He is more focused on finding his mother and what happened to her because he doesn't believe what the cops told him. And he's pretty much the one who's chasing the Project Buffalo, because he believes somehow that was involved with his mom. Like there's something going on with his mom and Project Buffalo.
Yeah, I think that sums up Sam really well. I don't really have anything else to add, actually.
Oh, did you like him? Because he's like your roguish character.
I did like his character. I thought he was interesting. He definitely is the rogue archetype character for sure. But I didn't dislike Sam.
I don't have anything to add about old Sam.
Oh, old Sam. It's their age.
Oh, shit.
No, it's just a phrase, guys.
Let's see. So our next character was Blind Bill. See, now you can say old Blind Bill. That would have been appropriate. Blind Bill is a homeless man that lives in Harlem as well. And we find out that he once had an ability, but it was stolen from him, which thrust him into not only an early onset old age, but also caused his blindness, if I remember right? Isn't that he became blind when his power got stolen?
Correct.
Yeah. So Blind Bill's not a major character in this book by a long shot, but he's definitely an interesting one because he's the one, as I mentioned before, that once he figures out Isaiah has powers, he steals some of the power from him, leeching the power off, which I thought I both understood why he did it, was also kind of surprised that he did it because that's what happened to him, and you wouldn't think he'd want that to happen to somebody else, but he's also a little cray-cray because he misses those powers that he had and his life as it was. But he's an interesting character. He's just not a major character.
Yeah. So Blind Bill is a very interesting character only because he does have roles, and like he's one of those people that also progresses in the series. And to kind of, because like in this book, he's not painted in a nice light. Like he's literally leeching off this little poor boy, and it's giving him like, it's the reason why he's having his little fits, as he calls it, right? Mm-hmm. So like he's kind of he's not I don't know, I feel like he skirts the edge right there in the whole gray area of a moral character. Like he's a morally gray character. Like he doesn't do anything evil in the sense like he's not your main villain, but he's also not a nice dude. And so to know more about, like, I do find him an interesting character, but obviously you guys would know that because you haven't read the other ones, but for sure, interesting character for him.
Fair enough. Lauren, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so. You guys pretty much covered everything. Although I did think it was a dick move that he was trying to steal Isaiah's.
Right? That's what I said. Like, little kid.
Right.
Definitely
Like, I mean, but I'm sure, like, he's just kind of at the point where he, like, gives zero shits and, like, he's like, somebody did it to me and now I'm freaking blind and old. So.
Yeah. Yep, I think you're right.
The next character is Theta, and she is a performer that lives in Evie's building.
Yeah, so Theta is it Siegfried's? Did I say that correctly? Pronounce it. Siegfried's little, what are they called? The dancer. Flapper. Thank you.
Flapper.
I was like, what is little dancer? So she is in the background and trying to like move up in the Siegfried's thing, but she works for the Siegfried office, like performing show thingamajigger. What is she hiding? Because that's kind of hinted on. Also, her and Memphis heart each other, and they learn about each other and kind of start like dating in this one. And I absolutely love their relationship, and I totally go gooey for them. I heart them. Also, Theta's my favorite character, but she plays a very minor role here. But I really enjoy her, and so yeah, do you have anything else, Michael, for Theta? Do you remember Theta?
I do remember Theta, but I don't have anything else to add. She's not a huge character in this book, and I think you pretty much covered the major points. So
yeah, I just think it's cute that she calls him her poet. Hey, poet. I'm like, so I'm a sucker for women who call their significant others like cute little names, but I don't do that because I absolutely hate that. But like, I love that for them.
I love that for them, but I'm not going to do romantic things for my own significant others.
Yep, that's it.
Pretty much it. Yep. Anyways, so moving on would be Henry, and he's Theta's roommate and coworker, aka he plays the piano for them and he writes music, and he's very talented. And
he's the Ryan Gosling of this story.
Ryan Gosling? What does that mean? What do you mean? From the movie. Okay, well, so you should have said he's the Ryan Gosling from the movies version. Fair enough. Would make more sense because Ryan Gosling just period doesn't make. Anyways, so yes, that he's also minor role in this.
Small to minor. It's minor.
I mean, girled it. Minor role in this, but obviously I feel like it's pretty. I would say it's very well hinted that he's going to play a big role. I don't know. Is that just me? Like, did you guys?
I think it's so. I think all the characters on this list, it's hinted that they're going to play larger roles in the future.
Yes,
at least
correct.
In some. Not necessarily they're all going to be main characters, but they all will have more to do in the future.
Correct. So, but yes, that's kind of him in a little bit of a nutshell.
So that's our list of the major characters in this book. So let's move on from that and kind of talk into.
God, we are struggle busting today, man.
Let's
not to mention that Michael just got done saying, or you just got done saying it was a minor character, and then he's like, so that's a list of our major characters.
So let's get into our discussion questions, is what I was trying to say. The first one is, what makes Evie so different from her Ohio friends, thinking outside of just her supernatural powers? So the main thing that makes her different is her supernatural. No, I'm just kidding. The main thing that makes her different from the Ohio friends is, I think it's what I was talking about earlier, that, she's essentially like a feminist in the 20s, and she has ideas and she has thoughts, and she's not ashamed of saying them and being outspoken. And I think that the type of person she is very much belongs in New York and not in small town Ohio. She's a very big personality, and I think that's what makes her different. She's bigger than her friends.
So I agree with what Michael said about Evie and the feminism, and just kind of being the type of person who is made for a bigger city, made for bigger things than Ohio. No offense to any of our listeners who reside in Ohio. There's nothing wrong with Ohio. But I think that, she just fits in much better in big city life. And obviously her powers.
she wants to be famous, and that fits in, you know, everyone says if you want to be a big star, especially in the 1920s, because LA really wasn't a thing back then. Like, if you wanted to be famous and well known, it was New York City that you went to, and that is her lifelong like dream. Is she wants to be famous. She doesn't want to be a housewife, or she wants to be more than just the housewife. And in Ohio back then, not saying now, this we're talking about in this fictional 1920s book era, like that, you know, they went to their little party, I don't know what's the debutante party, and that was what they did. And she wanted more. She wanted more than just that kind of a lifestyle. And also she wasn't considered like a normal girl even back then. I feel like she's very opinionated, and back then that was not okay to be. As a woman, you weren't allowed to have opinions, even though you did have them. You just weren't allowed to say it. She is very opinionated. She is very in your face. She'll tell you what she's thinking, what she means, a little bit brash in that sense. And I think that's why she was so different from her friends.
Yeah, I think that is all very, very true. I really liked Evie's character, except for the little things about that were a little annoying every once in a while, but otherwise mostly positive.
See,
things.
but I think that like I said, like I hate to say that's annoying. It is annoying, but that's what makes it endearing, because once again, it's the whole perfect character. Like she's a very flawed character.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very flawed character, and I think that offsets the point, because like you don't want like, oh, this perfect great character, because you won't have that arc, you won't see that growth, and you definitely see that, and not even in this book, like Trendy and in the other series, you will see that growth. So it's kind of
that's cool,
nice for that.
Yeah. So let's see. Our next question is: so the Diviners, this book is told in third person. How would the story be different if it's a specific character telling it? Do you think changing the point of view would make the story better or worse, and why?
I found, and I think that this is just because I listened to it rather than read it, that it was hard to track at times switching between the character stories, which I even noted as weird because I usually really like this in books. So I do think that it's just the audiobook experience for me, trying to keep track of everybody. I don't think making it in first person would make anything better. I think it would actually probably take away from the story. I tend to like to get different perspectives from different characters rather than just seeing it all from one perspective. It's also more difficult, I feel like, to write from one perspective. I don't know, maybe not. I'm not an author, but it's more difficult to get as diverse of character arcs and like getting to know them on a more personal level when you're writing just from the one perspective.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of like a twofold thing. So yes, this is told in third person. If we were to get this in a first person point of view, it would be hard to get multiple point of views, because I know some books you'll get like it's first person and you'll get like two perspectives, you know, for a story. In a story like this, where there's multiple perspectives, and yes, granted, we mostly get Evie, but we get a few of the other characters. I feel like if you would have switched it to first person, it would be even more difficult. And honestly, I would think it would be awful, because then you would be like, okay, so are we going to focus on just two characters? And if you do, then you dwindle the storytelling, because it's those only perspectives that you're going to get, versus a third person story where you can have that ability to have more point of views without it being extremely confusing and like whose point of view am I getting? I think it just gets even more confusing if you try to add that, especially like Michael mentioned, like this is going to turn into an ensemble cast. So with that in mind, I feel like a first person just wouldn't work. Also, I like when books switch characters and point of views, so I like getting different parts of the overall story. I actually am not a huge fan of first person just because of that. Because yeah, you get like the main person's point of view and you get their inner thoughts, inner feelings, but I think you miss out on an overall plot. So I think it's fine when books have that, but they have to do it extremely well, because I think you miss out on stuff when you have first person and you only have one character that you're only that, like their lens that you're seeing, whereas in this you can't. Like, we get to see Naughty John. Granted, we could have gotten Naughty John in first person, which I think would have been even more creepier, but then I think you learn a little too much about him, and you miss out on that mystery aspect of like how creepy he really is when you get to see it through someone else's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, so Barbara, you pretty much touched on everything I was going to say about the perspective thing. I think that this book, because it's an ensemble cast, even though it's mostly Evie. And obviously, if you just say like, oh, well, who would this be? And if it was a first person, it's going to be from Evie's perspective. And if you just imagine that's the case, you're going to miss out on a lot of the story. And so I think it would drastically change the story. I think it would not change it for the better. And the example that I thought of for that, as far as like not out or outside of this book, is Shadow and Bone book versus the TV show. Book is first person. You only get the main character's perspective. Alina, thank you. TV show is not. You get everybody's perspective. And I actually thought the TV show was better for that, because there's so much more depth and things going on. And so I think if you made this book first person, it would be the same problem that had. You lose some of that depth of the story.
That's an example of one I think that wasn't done well. Whereas the Hunger Games, also first person, but it makes sense to know about her and what's going on with.
True. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it really depends on your book. It does.
It totally depends on the story.
Made more sense.
Okay, so in the book, there's something called Project Buffalo that's mentioned throughout the book, and it's kind of a very secretive thing. And I'm curious what you two thought of what Project Buffalo is, and what you think that's going to look like in the future of the series as well. So I guess we'll start with Lauren on this one, because Barbara's going to know all the answers.
Yeah, Lauren has no idea. I did put that in a later question that we kind of discuss, as far as questions that I hope to get answered in future books, as far as Project Buffalo goes, because there was a lot of ominous hints that were thrown, but I really don't know what it's going to consist of. And
if I remember right, I mean, Project Buffalo is, all we really know about it is, from what I remember, which has been a little bit since I read this book, but we see that Will has a file at the end that he opens up that's titled Project Buffalo. I'm assuming Project Buffalo has something to do with a government project where either the government at least knows about these kids and their abilities, the diviners, as they're called, or the government is somehow responsible for creating the abilities in these children. And that's what Project Buffalo is. Which also has Stranger Things vibes. It does, very much so.
Very much so, yes.
Do you have anything you can tell us, Barbara, with just talking about the first book?
I mean, outside of what I've just said, Sam obviously believes something's going on with Project Buffalo, because that's why he, is in New York trying to find his mom. He doesn't believe in them saying that his mom ran off and left him. Like, he's like, no, something happened. She was, taken, whatever the case may be. And his only lead is Project Buffalo.
Like Eleven's mom.
I don't want to say too much, because I don't want to accidentally say something. So I'll just
That's
leave
fair.
It at
So
that.
I'm assuming the bulk of the information about Project Buffalo is going to come in future books. This was intentionally just kind of like a little hint.
Right. Like I said, these are self-contained stories. Like, this one is the whole Naughty John and his murder and all that stuff. But the things that do build upon are Project Buffalo, the diviners, their powers, that kind of stuff is what's going to be building on. So
do we learn about Project Buffalo in book 2?
So,
or do we have to wait all the way until book 4 to figure out?
So it's just like this one, you get more, but you won't know the big picture until the end, as I feel like, just like, Harry Potter and
which that makes sense.
Voldy, you don't know the big picture of all that, drops hints in here and there, and it's just that's the overall story is that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes sense. So moving on from Project Buffalo, I want to talk about Blind Bill Johnson again. So Blind Bill Johnson tells Memphis at one point, I just need a change of luck is all, in reference to, his life turning around. If we consider Blind Bill's statement, how does it foreshadow the events to come? And what role do you predict Blind Bill will play in the future? I think it's kind of a two-part question. So I think that what he said in this book, it foreshadows the fact that later in the book, he ends up leeching power from Isaiah. And that's kind of his move to change his own luck as it is. But as far as the future goes, my prediction for Blind Bill is that he's actually going to be some kind of an antagonist in the future. I think that he's going to end up, at the very least, taking Isaiah's powers and maybe more people's powers. I mean, now that we know he knows how to do that and leech power from people, what's to stop him from doing it with more than just one? So I could easily see Blind Bill being, I don't know about a major antagonist, but at least a minor antagonist in one of the future books, after he has stolen one or multiple powers from people and being a quite formidable foe at that point.
He's for sure going to steal people's powers. He's going to get his sight back, right? So then what are we going to call him? seeing Bill. I think that he's gonna. I agree with Michael. I mean, a good prediction would be
Probably just Bill, Lauren. They'll probably just call him Bill at that point.
I mean,
Anti-blind Bill.
that's boring though. And if
The man formerly known as Blind Bill.
I mean, it's kind of boring if you go by this title and then you end up just being Bill. Like, man. But sorry, Dad, if you're listening. Anyway, so I do think that he will probably continue his exploration of taking powers. He'll probably hone that, get better at it, and either use it for good. And, I don't know how you would use that for good if you're stealing powers from people. Maybe it's like an organ donor situation, like they're on their deathbed and you're like, I'm going to take all your powers before they die. I don't know.
Picture someone's like, give me your liver.
We're going to need a sound bite of that sound effect for like an Instagram post or something, I think.
So anyway, he's probably going to be an antagonist, like Michael said, or he could just totally fall off and be a not important character in the future. Yeah. But
Barbara, what's your prediction?
Barbara will know.
So as far as like the whole, foreshadow change of luck is all, like, he's using Isaiah because he knows he's got some going on as far as predicting the future or predicting things. So he is always constantly telling, like, hey boy, like, what's the numbers? Because he's playing the lottery, right? Like, that's what he's like, if I could just hit these numbers, I could just win and my luck is going to change. And then it turns into, oh, hey, maybe I can just steal your stuff and I can start seeing, like, I can start, my luck will change in that sense. That's all I'm going to say as far as what will, I can't predict that. I already know, and I can't just pretend and just say stuff. Just like, oh yes, he's going to, blah, blah, blah. So
that'd be kind of lame if you just lied about that.
He's not going to be a hospice power slurper.
Only time will tell.
So moving on from, the man formerly known as Blind Bill. The villain in this text is a mix of mystical and religious characteristics. Why do you think Bray utilized both spectrums instead of one or the other in her creation of Naughty John?
So this is definitely an interesting aspect of the book. I love a good villain. The one in this book was the stuff of nightmares, like we talked about earlier, and probably causing nightmares for myself and possibly my child. Who knows? I think Bray chose to utilize both spectrums to make it that much more unique and haunting, honestly. Because if you think about it, like, it's one thing to have like a physical serial killer going around and having to kind of catch them and do that whole thing. But it's another thing when they're like a totally different, like in a mythical realm, to where like it requires supernatural type stuff to kind of defeat them. And it also definitely solidifies my childhood fear of the Ouija boards.
That's how you write a good, well-rounded and creepy bad guy. It's like you just need, like, I feel like it adds the better layer for him. It fleshes him out. And it gives him like the motives and all that stuff, and also gives like our heroes like more to work with, I feel like. And that's why kind of she did both aspects, so it's not just like here's murder, it's murder with occult. But I think Lauren did a good job of pretty much describing it too.
I kind of agree.
I think it just makes her a good, well-written bad guy, hence why he's a well-written bad guy.
Exactly.
It's not one-dimensional, just murdering.
Just gives him more depth to have both sides, the mystical and the religious. So I agree. I think Lauren hit the nail on the head, and I think that the decision that she made was just to have a better written bad guy that adds more layer to his story than just, like Barbara just said, just being a killer. There's other parts of it. I agree. Let's see. Next question. Based on the characters in the novel, which supernatural ability would you most like to have and why?
So I would like to have Blind Bill. No, I'm just kidding. He doesn't have powers, or does he?
He's working on it.
Yeah, he's slowly leeching it away.
He's gonna slurp all the powers up. Remember?
No, this is tough since I've read the other books, and we learn about different powers, and I there was one that I was a particular fan of, but once again can't spoil anything. So for this one, I would say I enjoy Memphis's power of healing, because I think that, like, you always think like to help others, like that would kind of be cool. You know, you can kill. You can heal like the blindness from Blind Bill and call him Unblind Bill, you know, or you can do cancer, you can do a broken leg, you can do like all this stuff. So that would be kind of cool. But, you know, his power is not without, you know, issues affecting him as well. You know, obviously like that, it kind of takes a toll on him as it, you know, it would be kind of cool to just heal, but like if you don't have any consequences, you know, then it's kind of an OP power. But I think out of the ones that we know so far, I think his would be cool. As much as Evie's would be neat to know, I feel like, and she does, like she wears like gloves and stuff like that, and she doesn't like touching things. I feel like that would just be a lot, especially if you're not expecting to have like a strong feeling, you're just like touching someone's pen, all of a sudden like you get some vibes from that, you're like, oh my god, you know, I feel like that would affect your life more, and like you can't, like you have to be extremely more cautious because of that. So I think that would be a little bit harder for that one. Sam's would be cool, just be like, I'm not here, and there you go. But like now in day and age, like as an introvert, that would be fun. But then then I'm really introverting myself. Like, is that good for me healthy wise? Probably not, you know. But I mean, I guess it would make fun for like stealing things. I would feel bad stealing things. So
you're a monster.
I know. I was thinking more of like stealing money from the bank.
Go bigger than that. Stealing gold from the Federal Reserve.
I know that's still stealing, and I would feel bad because I unfortunately have a conscience. So it's like, what good is that besides like really his is more of like, I feel like not for bad purposes, but like what could you use that outside of being kind of creepy, you know, or not creepy, but yes, for creepy dudes, I can just picture dudes being creepy with that. Outside of like, how would you spin that for good? I'm trying to think. Like, is there?
I mean,
like,
there's
really?
there's Robin Hood.
That's still illegal. Like, that's the problem. It's still illegal. And even if you are stealing from like really wealthy people, like you're still stealing.
Right.
Like,
you think about like Aladdin, and you're like, okay, you know, there's some stealing there because he's hungry and he's not like hurting anybody, but it's still illegal.
It's still like, unfortunately, like there is rules in play. Like I can't, like, as much I would love to go and like steal from Jeff Bezos, like he doesn't need all his billions of dollars to make stupid yachts. Like he's spending his money in a stupid way, but at the end of the day, that's his money to spend really dumb in ways. Like, who am I to tell him how he's been? Like, I wish I could be like, hey, no, bro, like stop spending. I wish I could take it from me and disperse it to people who need it, but unfortunately that is not how you live life. That is not
Jeff
realistic.
Jeff Bezos is a listener, and he's gonna know.
Oh, is he a listener? Okay.
Of course he is, because he's got time for that.
Right. Well, that was.
Yeah, you should expect a call, Barbara. He'll probably be upset.
That would crack me up. I would get like an Amazon call or something creepy as F like that. But obviously, that was just an example. I'm not stealing nobody's money. I don't even have the means to do so. But like, I don't know. I just feel like his powers are cool, but like realistically speaking, like what could you really use it for? So I just, in a very long-winded answer, Memphis.
Extremely long-winded answer. Okay, so
you should know that by now. That's how I answer questions.
It's true. Yeah, that you're not wrong. So, I mean, for me, I think it's an obvious choice, right? I would choose Naughty John. I would take Naughty John's abilities, and
he doesn't have abilities. He just murders people.
Barbara, he's a ghost who kills people. Do you know a lot of ghosts who can kill people?
You're going to turn into a ghost?
I am. I'm going to turn into a ghost. I'm going to murder people. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Does Barbara get to kill you to make you the ghost?
Right. Like, how's that going to work?
I already promised Luna that responsibility. Kind of a weird thing she asked for, but anyway.
She's going to put you down the stairs.
Yep. Anyway, who I would actually pick is also Memphis. I think that'd be really cool to be able to heal people with your touch. Evie's power is cool, like Barbara said, but I think you'd inadvertently have like some really traumatic experiences with that. Like you'd be, you know, at your friend's house and like touch their bed sheet and like see a flashback of that sex or something. Like it could be.
Say that
because it's a valid example.
In traumatic, you went with Betsy.
It's a valid example of a bad practical use.
A creepy example.
But it can happen. Or like you go to use their bathroom, like you're having dinner at their house, and you like touch the toilet seat to like lift it or whatever, and you do like a massacre or something of like shit everywhere.
See, there's a lot of bad things that could happen with that. So the obvious choice is Memphis and his healing abilities.
Yes, I also chose Memphis, and I chose the healing abilities because I am in the healing field as far as mental health goes. I think it fits best with my personality, although I did note that Evie's power would maybe, though having its obvious drawbacks, come in handy in therapy sometimes, because then I would just, be able to touch somebody's purse and get all of their, trauma history and not have to, spend however many months it takes to kind of pull that out of people. But, that would not be ethical, and I would not do that anyway. But, and I also hadn't thought about the repercussions of touching your friend's bed sheets. So
none of us have, but Michael, just because Michael, creepy. This is my example of creepy men having Sam's powers. Michael, right there. Michael, just to a T. Yeah, yes. Weirdo.
You guys are rude, but I'll accept it. It's fine. Moving on from there, the next question is about questions. What was the biggest question that you would like answered in one of the future installments of this series?
Does everyone die at the end? The answer is yes.
Oh my God.
I'm not reading them anymore. Just like the significance of Project Buffalo. I want to know. It's a little disheartening to hear Barbara say that that's like the big picture thing, because I was like, is that going to be the big picture, or do I get to know that in the next
amongst other things? But yes, that one is.
Damn. All right. And then, is Evie's brother alive or dead or a spirit? Like, what is he? Because clearly he's more than just dead, because, So, curious about the state of James, right? His name is James.
Yes. And
then who's the creepy man at the end who can talk to crows and rocks and sand and stuff? And then he's got like the hat on, and then he's like doing the things with the rabbit. Like, who's that guy?
Those are all. So I'm not going to answer anything or say anything because I don't have any questions.
She just starts answering them.
Well, actually, no. I mean, I'm not going to pose any questions because I know them. But I will say, Lauren, those are some great questions. Very great questions.
For me, a lot of the questions are similar. Like mine was Project Buffalo as well, significance of that. I also want to know if the guy's really dead, like I talked about before. I didn't think about the guy at the end.
The guy's really dead?
Her brother.
You mean James?
James. I didn't think about the last question Lauren had. But the one question I had that you didn't have was, I'd like to know, like, what's going to happen with Blind Bill. Like, I'm very curious where his story's going.
I already told you what's going to happen with Blind Bill, Michael.
Right. He's going to go full Thanos and take everybody's powers. And
yeah.
And be unblinded Bill.
He's going to be formerly blinded Bill. And he's going to become a hospice nurse undercover. And he's going to suck the powers out of the dying.
Just like this.
Just like that, yes.
Yeah.
The fun sound effect you've now both engaged in during this episode. So, moving on to our final question. If you had a supernatural ability, would you embrace or deny your powers, number one? And would you use them for good or evil?
Isn't every kid's dream to like have supernatural abilities? Is that just me? Because I feel like okay. No, well, I know it was my dream, so I would embrace the crap out of these powers. I've always wondered about the whole reluctant hero trope, like why that's a thing. I mean, I get it, but like realistically speaking, I feel like 9 out of 10 kids are going to be like, embrace the power. Like, I wish I had powers. Like, I daydreamed about having powers as a kid. So yes. Plus, at the adventuring, I get people like, oh no, but like you're, the world's only hope and you're going to die and all that crap. Like, as a kid, you think you're invincible. You don't think about that crap. You're like, woo, So even without powers, we think we're like that. It's not until later you're like, oh, maybe not. So 100p would embrace the crap out of them powers. Still waiting for my powers right now, As far as what I do, good or evil, I would hope I would use it for good. Like, I guess you really don't ever know until you actually get powers. So it's kind of a hard question, but I feel like I know myself, and I feel like I would, I'm a decent human being, so I think I would, use it for good. I mean, hell, I even mentioned like Sam's power would be cool, but like outside of just like if here's what I would like Sam's power to do. Some creepy dude is talking to me, just boop, disappear. Bye, bitch. Bye, Felicia. But like outside of that, so his powers are he disappears in the sense that you physically can't see him, but his dead ass is still there. So it's like you running into some dead ass space and you're like, the fudge. So that's kind of like ruins the whole that aspect, So it's like, yeah, like, I don't know, like outside of pickpocketing, like he did, and I guess okay, fine, you can steal shit, but like I can't see a good out of that. So maybe that's towards like, would I use it for good? Like I think so, because the easy answer for his powers would be like, oh, I gotta steal stuff, and that's as fun as that sounds, you're still stealing from someone.
So for me on this one, I think it's going to depend on the power, right? Because like if you get a power like, you know, Superman, like that's going to be pretty cool. Embrace the power to fly, be super strong, have laser heat vision coming out of your eyes. But you know, what if you're, you know, Squirrel Girl from Marvel, and
I don't know what that is.
So Squirrel Girl's power is that she can communicate with squirrels.
And what's wrong with that? That would be so BA.
I was like, never mind, it's inappropriate.
Or DC's Rainbow Girl, her power is that she can be emotional.
Michael, as a male, I feel like y'all need a little more of that anyways.
That's her power. What's wrong
with that?
Squirrel Girl, how many nuts can she fit in her mouth?
There's a wow. Wow.
Can you please cut that one out?
That's it.
The other one, like that, there's getting back on track here. There's the doorman.
In my face.
Oh my god.
Oh no. Should we just have that episode just be that?
So what I was saying is it depends on the power you get. If you are Squirrel Girl and you can talk to squirrels, or if you are Rainbow Girl, if you're Rainbow Girl and your power is to be emotional, or if you're the doorman and your power is to be able to teleport someone into the next room, like those are kind of lame powers.
And, still powers,
and maybe you wouldn't embrace them as quickly as you would, you know, something like
I don't know,
Superman,
like if you were being rude to me, I'd be like goodbye, like,
Green and I could just walk back into, like through the doorway, like
yes, but like you would get tired after a while if I kept doing that.
Anyway, that was all. That was my only point. I would also use them for good, whatever the power was, except for squirrels. If I could talk to squirrels, I would just use them.
Quit bringing up squirrel.
So, Lauren, what about you?
Oh, I would agree with Barbara. Like, I would embrace whatever, because what kid doesn't want superpowers or supernatural abilities of some sort? I think obviously it would suck to have like certain things. I don't know, like if the power that you have also like comes with something detrimental, like, you know, if you heal this person, then it like takes away from, I don't know, like
this is the one I was trying to think of, and it's perfect for what you just said. Her name is Infectious Lass. She's a carrier for thousands of diseases, and that's her power, is to give people infections.
I'm sorry, her name is Infectious Lass.
Lass.
Like a laugh.
The Infectious Lass. Her power was to infect people with various diseases. She could not control who she infected or what she infected them with.
Oh, I was going to say, can you just give a bit of like botulism to people? And there you go. You got your Botox.
So you could be giving your daughter a hug, and then she has Ebola.
Oh, shit. So, all right. I would embrace it if it was within the realm of the normal supernatural ability.
I guess, I never thought about these kind of powers. Like what the hell?
So
you got to think about that.
I mean, you know, who thinks about that, really?
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is that a thing?
And like, how would you use something like that for that example for good? Like, you if you have no control over it, and you just walk around like you're just like a human virus, and you have no control over which viruses you give and which you don't, and who, and you can't use it for good or evil because you're just basically a big old crapshoot.
I was like, you're Thanos in that sense. You get Ebola. You get Ebola.
So I put that I would embrace it. Always wanted powers. Still waiting on my Hogwarts letter. Got to drop Harry Potter in here somewhere. And I feel like, though, in the Harry Potter sense, if I was like a witch and that was my supernatural ability, I feel like I would probably try to use them for good the majority of the time. But do I feel like I might, do a spell to, mess with not about a cadaver shit, Barbara. Something more tame.
The Cruciatus.
Golly. I'm thinking more like the puking slugs thing, you know, something more tame to like somebody that's being a dick to somebody else, or.
But that's not bad. I mean,
but
I
I'm
feel
still
like,
causing them harm, so I think
but, you know, they caused harm first, so
that's true.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's true.
That's not evil. Good and evil, like that's in the gray area.
So you're saying you'd be cool being infectious lass if you could control who you infected with diseases?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if I could control it and like either just never infect anyone and then everybody's happy, or, you know, somebody's a dick, give them a little 2-week flu.
I was thinking more of like, instead of putting prisoners in jail, like if you have a life sentence, like death.
There you go.
There's no tax dollars used. It's
Well,
just
you can
just
also
Ebola girl over here just effing things up. Like, you're welcome.
well, and you could, you know, in that instance, you know, you could, you know, for the child molesters and like the really just
Barbara, I think giving prisoners deadly diseases qualifies as cruel and unusual punishment.
I mean, is it though?
I mean, like, they do to people, you know, but I'm just thinking, like, if you know, like Barbara said, you've got a bunch of rapists in there. Like, what's the most slow way to make them die with a disease?
So I didn't go that far. I just said you can just give them
miserable.
something and they die. Like,
So anyway, we've kind of gone off the deep end with powers.
Real dark.
So that let's move on to our next thing, which is just talking about our individual scores for this book. Barbara, what was your score for The Diviners?
mine was an 8 out of 10.
Me too. It was also an 8. Lauren, what was yours?
It was an 8.
Hey, the easiest average we've ever had. No decimals. I love it.
Woo, 8. So can I do an 8.2?
Oh my God. So our group score is an 8 out of 10. Pretty solid score. I think we all recommended it as well. So if you've liked what you heard and for some reason you listened to the spoiler part, I guess you can go pick up the book now. But yeah, that's it for today's episode. Barbara's going to give us a little bit of info on our way out.
So have feedback about today's episodes, contact us by writing to the badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. And it's not but I just said I think I said so my bad. It's not it's just badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. Sorry. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook. One of these days I will get that damn thing right. Today is not that day.
Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app and give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Our username is @BadassLitPod on both Instagram and Facebook. With that, I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Or Ebola last. Squirrel girl.
Michael's gonna go get a squirrel girl now.
Bye.
Bye.